friends, happy Friday! Troy and I are back at the Sophomore. We got our little setup going, and it's a chilly one out there today, 30 degrees, pretty cloudy. It was hard to get out of bed, I will say that. But we made it up to Boulder, here to do the pod. You know, it's been, I'd say, a more or less quiet week, at least on the football side, but on the basketball side, the Buffs, at least on the men's side, aren't on the hottest streak after getting beat down once again by Arizona and lost against UCLA last night. But we'll get into that. One thing we do want to start with on the football side is that Xavier Weaver got invited to the NFL Combine. So that was very exciting to see. I think he was definitely the one out of the five guys. Taj Alston, Roderick Ward, Derek McClendon, Javon Antonio, and himself to, he was probably the most likely to receive an invitation from what he did last year. He's a really quick and versatile guy, and I think, the NFL is interested in what he can produce on the field and what he did with Shedeur Sanders last year.
Yeah, as you mentioned, he's the only Buff that got invited to the Combine. The rest are in the draft but won't be at the Combine. He was one of 38 receivers that got picked, and he's kind of in a tough spot. It's an awesome wide receiver class.
Marvin Harrison.
Super deep receiver class. Yeah, Marvin Harrison is a treat to watch.
Yeah.
But there might be 15 to 20 receivers in the first 3 rounds, which is just an insane number. So hoping that Xavier Weaver can test well. Obviously, we know his speed and his athleticism is one of his strengths. He's a smaller guy. So if he can do well in the speed and agility drills, then hopefully he can sneak into day 3, get scooped up, and earn an opportunity in camp.
Yeah, those dates, February 26th and March 4th, so...
Coming up soon, huh?
Yeah, coming up soon. Yeah, I've assumed there's probably a lot of wide receivers, across the NFL Combine. They're definitely looking at a lot of, those skill positions are always the ones that I feel like are always taken, higher in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
At least, unless you're Will Anderson and you're just, a terrorist
Nikki's
defensive
excited.
end.
Nikki's excited for next year when the Chiefs have better receivers.
Oh my God, yeah, the Super Bowl. That was a tough one for me for sure. I was watching it with my family on Sunday, and so that was the second Super Bowl ever to go into overtime, and it was a thriller. I mean, I don't even.
That was my one dig. I'm sorry.
I
had to get
know.
one in.
Well, I'm glad you got that win. The 49ers fans are, definitely disappointed with that, and unfortunately Wednesday's tragedy was just so terrible as well. I think you just have to mention that. Of course, the 49ers lost, but what happened in Kansas City is just so horrendous, and I just was, speechless. It's hard to, celebrate in this country without maybe a imminent threat, but we won't get into gun policies and stuff because that's what we're not here to talk about.
Yeah, thoughts to everyone affected in Kansas City, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I like your shoes.
Than you.
Yeah, nice. You look good today.
I try to keep them clean. I appreciate it.
I'm wearing the same thing I always wear, but you can help me clean my shoes maybe one day.
Okay, I'm down.
Thanks.
We could do that.
All right, last night was Thursday night. The Buffs were in Pasadena playing against UCLA, which is a pretty hot team right now. They won 7 of their last 8 games, and they're on a 5-game winning streak. Now they're on a 6-game winning streak, being the Buffs 64-60 last night, and it was just definitely a back-and-forth game. I was really impressed by Dembona, of course. He was one of the guys from last year's team. You're like, damn, he's so good. He's so hard to maneuver around. He's such a great defender. He's able to get up on the post and get up those easy shots. I think a lot of what the Buffs were doing last night were just giving the Bruins a lot of access in the paint, at least in the first half. A lot of turnovers there. KJ Simpson went 1-7. He only had 4 points last night, and I think that was definitely a definitive factor in why they couldn't make that push. Because KJ Simpson, he was making shots towards the end, but he wasn't making those shots. So it's tough when you're, KJ, who's not averaging 19.4 points per game. He's their guy to get them, going offensively. It was Eddie, Cody Williams, and Tristan who were able to get some points up there, but ultimately, I think the cards did not fall into Ute's favor towards those last final possessions.
Yeah, you mentioned Bona. He's a tough matchup for Eddie. He's just such a good athlete.
Yeah.
And Eddie is more of a below-the-rim, kind of big-body bruiser type player. So an above-the-rim guy like Bona gives him some problems a little bit. And you mentioned KJ. That was the number one. Well, the number one thing I had down was how sloppy they were in the first half. The first half was just, and I didn't think. Sometimes they've had these road woes. They're 1-7 in true road games now. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those times they've just kind of come out flat. But I didn't see that last night. I thought they were playing with urgency. I thought they were playing with purpose. But the execution was just so poor.
Yeah.
In the first half, they.
9 turnovers?
9 turnovers in the first half. I think 8 of them were in the first 12 or 13 minutes.
Yeah.
They were at one point they were losing by 7 and they were shooting 80% from the field. And I was like, how
sloppy possessions.
Yeah, it really is. And you mentioned KJ. Does he look tired to you at all?
I mean, at least not initially. I feel like he always comes out with a lot of energy, but I think there is like some discouragement once you're missing a lot of shots.
Yeah.
Sometimes guys can like reawaken in the second half, but I think for him, just the pressure that UCLA was putting on him was, potentially tiring him out. Like,
incredible, really good defense.
They're getting him from all angles, and I mean, he was just trying to make, like Sebastian Mack was just making these like tough like mid-range like layups. Like I was really impressed by him last night and his ability to just like get in the paint and just like slip by defenders. Cody did well at that as last night too, but for KJ, I think maybe towards the end he looked tired. I wouldn't say he looked defeated, but he just wasn't making shots as efficiently as he does because of how effective their defense was.
Yeah, UCLA has. I mean, Mick Cronin's got them playing really good ball lately. They're finally starting to make some shots. They've been solid defensively all year, but they've really amped it up. And I think that is tough for KJ trying to be the offensive engine against such a good defensive team while also having to guard Sebastian Mack, who's the leading scorer on the other side. I only ask that about him being a little bit run down because I was digging into it this morning, and the last 6 games, he's been on the bench for 11 minutes total. He has barely sat at all in 6 games, and really even the beginning of conference play was barely sitting. He had a couple games in the 20s against USC when they blew USC out. But yeah, 11 minutes on the bench the last 6 games. 5 of those 6, he's been below 50% shooting. We know that was his efficiency was really one of his calling cards early in the year. So it's just, and it's hard when they only play 7 guys that Tad Boyle seems like he really trusts, and KJ Simpson's backup Julian Hammond has been playing through his back injury for a couple months. It's hard to ask him to play 20-25 minutes on a bad back. He only played 15 last night. So it just, they feel like they're kind of running out of steam a little bit. Yeah,
and it's like, it's unfortunate. Like I saw this tweet, and I think it's like the perception of them going into the season. I mean, they had like 2 potential, Pac-12 players, like all Pac-12 players with Tristan Da Silva and KJ, a 5-star freshman, Eddie, who showed a lot of promise in being that, solidified big, and Eddie has showed up in those ways as well. There's so much potential with this team. Even like John Rosenthal was like, this team is going to be a team to watch out for going into the season, and now it's like, as it dwindling on, and March is right around the corner. It's not the same perception of what we had this team, what we're seeing now. It's not that same result, and 2-game losing streak. It's like I think the biggest repercussions here is like their ability to get into the tournament. I mean, those dreams may be quite far away now, and you can definitely get into that. It's like we saw a really good team going into the season, and now that energy is definitely fluctuating. Like, I think that a potential win against Arizona, they're a super hard team to beat, but if they needed anything, is like a win against Arizona at home to get them through that last push. And now you take a loss at UCLA. USC has kind of been flashy recently, but I don't know. It's like, I think they might realize, I know they probably don't think this, but like coming to terms with a potential NIT fate. Yeah, it's frustrating because the talent that you mentioned that we kind of were so excited about coming into the year
it pops up in spurts almost every night. I mean, we saw it last night. They were down by 14 points. They march all the way back.
Cody was excellent.
Cody and Tristan Da Silva in the second half were great. They helped bring him back into the game.
Cody 8 of 8 last night.
Yeah, 8 of 8. I'm surprised they haven't corrected.
Because he took that last shot and then he was 8 of 9, but that doesn't count because it was like at the end of the buzzer.
I thought it was after the buzzer, but they still haven't corrected it, so maybe it is.
He didn't. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But you're right. Regardless, Cody and Tristan were great. They brought him all the way back, and that they really amped up the defensive intensity during that stretch. And then in the last 2 or 3 minutes, Cody got lost on a screen. Stefanovic got a wide open 3 that made it a 5-point game. That was a killer.
Felt like a dagger, you know.
Yeah. They had done all that work to get back into it, and to fall short is a killer. And you're right. The tournament right now is really feeling like a long shot. I mean, you get into the numbers, and it just isn't. It's not looking good for the Buffs. Their net's down to 42 this morning after the loss last night. That's might be the lowest it's been all year. They're 37th in KenPom, which is okay, but their resume lacks quality at this point. As I mentioned, they're 1-7 in true road games. Their non-conference strength of schedule on KenPom is 235th in the country.
That's deep.
They're 1-5 against quad one games, and the only win is on the road against a Washington team that's really shaky. So that win isn't gonna hold much weight. They're only 5-4 against quad two games, and they really right now. I mean, the Miami win from the non-conference has not held up at all. The Oregon win in Boulder towards the beginning of conference play has not held up. The Ducks have kind of fallen off a bit.
Yeah.
They right now, I mean, they've got 16 wins. CU does, but the only one that is against a team that looks like it's going to be in the tournament right now is at home against Washington State.
Yeah, definitely they'll have to maybe throw a Hail Mary Pac-12 championship win to notch a slot in the tournament. But even, looking at their schedule, they have USC, Utah, Cal, Stanford, Oregon State tournament. And you look at those teams and none of them are ranked. At least, not as now. Is Utah ranked?
No.
Yeah.
And they certainly will not be after last night.
Yeah, dwindling Pac-12. So I mean, there isn't a lot of convincing arguments left to really. I mean, imagine if they win all of those games, then maybe that could be an interesting storyline there to get that push. But the way the Buffs are playing, it's like, can they? I mean, last night would have been the game to potentially notch, but.
Yeah, you think 6-0 is probably the only path there. Utah at home, that would be a decent win. Oregon on the road, as long as Oregon doesn't completely fall off of a cliff in the next couple weeks. That game in Eugene might be a quad one opportunity. They're 63rd in net right now, so hopefully Buffs will get a chance to pick up a second quad one win there. But I was looking at the one more thing on the tournament, and then we can move on. I was looking at Bracket Matrix this morning, which takes every bracketologist and compiles all of their projections into one site. There's 103 of them. CU is only projected to make the tournament in 6 of those brackets right now, and that all of those were updated before the loss last night. So it's looking very bleak.
Yeah. In conclusion, a dwindling season, another NIT win. I feel like, we love Tad so much, but do you think, I think Jimmy had an interesting point about league, Jimmy Steerfoss, shout out Jimmy, he had an interesting tweet this morning about how Tad sends guys to the league, but when you look at the program and, the past how many or so years, there isn't a lot of wins there. And I feel like this season was the season to be that winning team, to really, build that foundation. But do you think, I feel bad because I love Tad, but I'm like, what do you think about Tad's position with Colorado after this season, if things go south?
If things go as they're going.
Yeah. Already south.
Look, it's hard. His buyout's around $10 million. and they're going to the Big 12, which is going to be an absolute war every single night.
Yeah.
There will be, the Pac-12 this year might only have 2 teams in the NCAA tournament, and the Big 12 this year might only have 2 or 3 teams that are not in the NCAA tournament. So the level, the step up in competition is going to be real. Arizona is going to be right over there with us, so we're not getting away from Arizona. Kansas is awesome. Houston is awesome. Baylor is awesome. Iowa State is awesome this year. Kansas State, Texas. All these teams are good.
Woof.
Good.
Texas Tech upstate number 6 Kansas.
Texas Tech's very good too. TCU's very good. They've got a ton of really good teams in that conference. But you're right. This was kind of the year where it felt like that this program was ready to kind of take a step up. And I know that they've had a ton of, the context is not kind with the injuries. Everyone has injuries, but CU's had more than everyone else.
Yeah.
But you look at the bench, the backup bigs, Asanjo and Bangot Dak, have not turned into capable rotation pieces as freshmen. Still a lot of upside there for both of them, but it's just left them so shallow where even Luke O'Brien turning an ankle and having to miss a game is a killer. Even Julian Hammond having to play, only being able to play 15 to 18 minutes because of his back instead of 25 to 28 minutes. Those things are killer. Javon Hadley missing a game, Cody missing a game. All of these things are they're magnified so immensely when you are lacking that amount of depth. So, to your original point, it's hard. It's hard to know what to do with Tad. He's done so much for this program. He's kept them competitive. But there's really no way around the fact that this is the second most talented team in a really poor league, really poor power conference league, and it's looking like it's still going to be the NIT.
Yeah, very good points, Troy. And yeah, there's just so much history there, and I think the expectation was different this year, but I think the overall feeling towards the men's basketball team is just it's pretty neutral. It's never up high, it's never too bad. It's always around 500 or better, which is what you want to see. That's how Mike Tomlin hangs out so much in Pittsburgh. But it's it's definitely something just to think about. But I hope that isn't the case. It's just it seems pretty. There's never that push towards the tournament except the 2020 season. The
fan base is getting impatient.
Yes.
That's how I would put it.
Yeah, but on the other side, the women are doing so well. If March Madness started, at least yesterday, they'd be number 4 overall, and they have the number 1 seed in Portland Regional 4. So the women are in a great spot. They're doing really, still winning a lot of games. They're able to bounce back quickly. What are you seeing in this matchup against number 22 Utah tonight?
I'll get to Utah in a sec, but
okay.
Since you highlighted the selection, were you surprised by that at all?
No, they're one of top 5 teams in the country.
I agree.
They should get that slot, shouldn't they?
Yeah, I was a little surprised coming off of the loss Sunday to see them ahead of NC State.
They lost to Oregon State, right?
Yeah, they lost to Oregon State Sunday. Pretty poor performance by their standards.
That's their kryptonite, it seems like.
Oregon State's a tough matchup for them for a couple reasons, really, and it stuck out to me almost every possession the first half on Sunday. CU's biggest advantage over most teams is their size, and they don't have that against Oregon State. Oregon State's one of the best rebounding teams in the conference. They're big. We saw CU have some similar problems against UCLA, who is the biggest team that you might see, other than maybe South Carolina.
Yeah.
But Oregon State, you lose the size advantage as CU, but all of Oregon State's, they almost always are playing 5 players who are athletic and can shoot the ball. So when you have a big like Aaron Vonleh, who's not as athletic, a big like Quay Miller, who's less athletic, and they're being asked to kind of chase shooters around screens. There were so many miscommunications. I talked to J.R. Payne on Wednesday before they left yesterday for Utah, and she couldn't believe how many miscommunications there were in the first half. Oregon State was 7 for 8 from 3 in the second quarter. It was
7 from the second quarter?
Yeah,
wow.
Just in the second quarter. So it's a tough matchup for CU. If they play them again in Vegas, I'm curious to see how they approach it. Maybe with more Sarah Rose Smith, because she's still a good rebounder, but gives you a more athletic option at the 4 spot. But I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on Sunday. But they were just. It was surprising that they were kind of dead, considering that they had already lost to Oregon State earlier in the year. They were fired up to kind of get their chance at getting revenge. But on to Utah tonight in a really big game. Big night for Pac-12 women's basketball. UCLA is up in Corvallis as well, playing at Oregon State. So a couple big standings games. Buffs obviously beat Utah back on December 30th, 76-65. That was Jalen Sherrod's best game of her great season. 34 points. She had 13 in the fourth quarter and didn't miss a shot. She was phenomenal. She took over the game.
Yeah.
Buffs defense, along with Jalen Sherrod, took over the game. The biggest thing from that game that I think they need to carry on the road tonight is that they made Utah play their game in Boulder that day. It was a lot. It was a big Kendall Wetta day. They played Jalen Sherrod and Kendall Wetta together a lot. They forced a ton of turnovers. They forced 12 turnovers just in the second half, and they really pushed the pace. 29-5 in fast break points that day. We know Jalen Sherrod loves to run along with the rest of the Buffs. So those are really the big keys I'm looking for. And the other thing, big X factor tonight, could be Sarah Rose Smith. That was her best game of the season against Utah back in Boulder. She had a double-double, played a ton. Quay Miller struggled with foul trouble that day. But it was a good matchup for Sarah Rose Smith. Utah really only plays one big, Alyssa Peely, who is one of the best players in the country. But around that, it's all really guards and shooters. So playing Sarah at the 4 really helps them in this matchup. She was great in that game. She is still struggling a bit. She's coming back. She missed 4 games with a concussion a couple weeks ago. Since she came back, she's kind of been struggling shooting the ball. Her playing time's kind of been up and down, but I would expect her to bounce back in a big way tonight.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of flashes from Maddie Nolan too. I mean, she's been playing really well. She had a really good game recently against. It was before Oregon State, wasn't it?
Yeah, Oregon.
Yeah, she was just draining threes. I mean, they won that game with 90 points. So, I mean, I think seeing her growth within the team, and she's that veteran piece, and I feel like that game was like her game to show like she can be that key piece for them. You know, Frida's having a cold day, but they're with Maddie and Frida, like they are so dangerous from 3-point.
That's what they were. It's kind of what they were missing last year in a way. Obviously, they were a great team last year, but they were the spacing last year was so Frida dependent. Like anytime Frida wasn't on the floor or anytime Frida wasn't making a ton of shots, it was it felt so congested because there was just a lack of we know that Quay Miller can shoot threes. Jalen Sherrod has improved her 3-point shot. Erin Vonleh's improved her outside shot, but Frida was the only one on the team last year that was at the level where teams were game planning to not let her get shots off from the 3-point line. Now you have Maddie Nolan in the mix, and it just makes them so much harder to guard. It opens the floor up for Erin Vonleh in the post. It opens the floor up for Jalen Sherrod driving into the paint. So she, and you're right, she's really coming on. Maddie Nolan is. She's starting to shoot the ball really, really well, like we know she's capable of. She's been phenomenal lately.
Yeah, this team has been so consistently good throughout the year. So that number 1 seed and that placement that they have, it is interesting with the loss against Oregon State. But I think their resume throughout the season, they beat so many ranked teams, and LSU being one of like the very flashy ones as well. Like Also, Caitlin Clark reaching all-time.
Yeah, shout out to Caitlin Clark.
Scoring record.
Breaking
Did you see the way she did it? She just hit a three way downtown from the logo, and she was like, "Woo."
She
whatever.
said it after the game. Did you see that? Her press conference. She said, "You guys knew I was going to take a logo 3 for the record." So,
It's impeccable. It's impeccable what Caitlin Clark does, and last night was just a historic night for her and women's athletics and just athletics all around. I mean, it's like one of the greatest careers I think and witnessed in history. I mean, she's the #1 all-time scorer in women's basketball. So
100%. Shout out to Kelsey Plum too, who was the former record holder. Washington, Pac-12, 2-time defending WNBA champion.
Yeah.
Kelsey Plum. So
for the Buffs, there's such a bright future there. Tournament, like going deep in the tournament, like they're such a competitive team. They're so dynamic, and the Pac-12. I mean, they've been playing in the Pac-12 this whole time, and they're one of the most competitive leagues. Pac-12 tournament is going to be interesting. Troy's going with our photographer Nigel to Vegas, so he'll be covering that there. And I mean, last year we saw Washington State just kind of come out of the woodwork and just beat these teams. And last year it was Stanford that really was the team to beat. Mm-hmm. But now it seems like the Buffs are the team to beat.
Yeah, the Pac-12 tournament.
And UCLA, oh my God, they're so good.
And Stanford again. Don't forget about Stanford. Stanford's
and USC.
Stanford's going to have your face.
I need to check the rankings.
Stanford's going to have your face on the bulletin board. He doesn't think we're the team to beat.
Shit.
Don't give Tar Vanderveer any extra. But you're right. I was there last year for the women's tournament in Vegas. I'll be there again. Very excited for that. It was a great tournament last year. Washington State pulling a bunch of upsets, including upsetting CU in the semifinals. Mm-hmm. UCLA upsetting Stanford in the semifinals as well. So that was it was an awesome tournament. It's incredible to think about all of the good teams that we're going to get to watch at that tournament. CU is, I mean, as you mentioned, the committee has them as the 4th #1 seed right now. They might still be the 6th seed in the Pac-12 tournament.
Insane.
The top 6. So these are big games. They're, off the top of my head, Stanford is probably going to win the conference regular season. Mm-hmm. They're 11-2, game clear of CU, and their schedule is super light. They play Oregon State still, but then they play like the Arizona schools and the Washington schools. So they should cruise to the finish. But after that, CU has 3 losses in conference. Oregon State has 3 losses in conference. UCLA has 4 losses. USC has 4 losses, and Utah has 5 losses. They're all top 25 teams. They're all right there. As I mentioned, UCLA plays Oregon State tonight. Obviously, CU and Utah. So there's going to be a lot of jockeying for position in the coming weeks. Obviously, those top 4 seeds get the first round bye, which is super important. Just get an extra day of rest. It helps a lot if you get to Sunday, if you've only had to play 3 games in 4 days instead of 4 games in 5 days up there. So, final year of the Pac. It's been fun. It's been a ton of fun. I'm really excited for the next couple weeks and see how the seeding shakes out, and then get to Vegas and let them all battle it out.
Yeah, I know. Oh, March Madness. Are you gonna do you do a bracket every year?
Yes. I'm only one bracket though. I used to be the kid that did like 10 different brackets.
That's hard to manage.
I don't like doing it that way anymore. I do one bracket. One bracket.
I know. I'll have to go do some research on, because last year I picked Purdue, and we all know how that played out. They got knocked out in the first round by the
FDU.
FDU.
They got stuck in an elevator last night and won.
Yeah.
How about that?
Another exciting basketball season coming up. A lot to look forward to with the women. Interesting path for the men to really try and get a tournament bid, but I don't think that is going to be happening. We'll see what happens this weekend with the USC. EA CFB 25.
I'm so excited.
I'm
so excited, guys. I'm so excited. Guys, I'm so excited. I played NCAA 14 until my PS3 burnt out and wouldn't turn on anymore, a couple years ago. I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
Maybe we'll hook it up here and we'll do a pod where we play together, because I've never played. I don't play Madden or I think I should start playing Madden so I can learn the X's and O's more. Maybe that'll be my off-season task with Troy, is to force him to teach me the specifics.
I love Madden.
You can show me cover 2.
Hell yeah. Let's do it.
A lot of different things. But yeah, a lot of hoops. Kind of quiet on the football front, but the coaching staff, as we said last time, is all solidified. And April, it seems, we're already halfway through February. April is kind of right around the corner. I mean,
It'll be spring game before you know it.
yeah, it'll be the spring game before you know it on April 27th. It's going to be a big ordeal once again. I think that's what Coach Prime was detailing. In a few podcasts, I saw a bunch of Twitter dialogue about it. So another exciting day in Boulder, but a lot more to look forward to with basketball and football. So we'll see you guys next time.
Hit the horn.
Boop. That's what the horn sounds like. All right, see ya.